Okay, hello everybody. I think that I might actually be having a problem where, let's see. Oh, there it is. Okay, cool. Hi, and welcome to Guess That Skull. What we are going to be doing today, hi Frankman from Hamburg, welcome. So what we're going to be doing today is I'm going to be screen sharing as I am processing a 3D rendered model of a skull. And I'm going to try not to give away ahead of time what the skull is. Oh, thank you, David Howden, for the high award. That's so nice. I'm going to try not to give away what skull it is ahead of time. Although me being me, I can totally see myself accidentally saying what it is. So first clue is, I'll put it in the chat as well. The first clue is that this is an iconic animal. So not something weird, okay? And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Okay, so you should be able to see this skull now. And you can move it around and look at it. So this is what we're going to be working with today. Could someone, if you could, just confirm in the chat that you can see it, that would be great. Not seeing it yet. Uh-oh. Strange. Weird, very weird. Oh, I know, duh. I'm so silly. I'm so silly, I have to do this. Oop. Wait, why is that happening? And yet I can't see myself. Very strange haps. Okay. Now we should be able to see it. Yes, well, as you can tell, it's not intuitive for me, and sometimes strange things do seem to happen. But yeah, yeah, I think unfortunately the pixelation on my camera is going to be a problem. Part of it is that this skull and this software isn't on my computer, so we're having to sort of remote access into another computer at a different location. And that just makes it a bit slow and laggy, both in terms of my internet is going to be laggy. And so perhaps, predator, perhaps mustelid. So David is correct. This is a type of a predator. He's probably, I'd imagine, sort of honing in on these teeth here. Perhaps mustelid. Nope. I'm going to give, before I start processing this skull, I'm going to give one more clue. And that is this picture. I'll put it briefly of me holding the skull. So in that picture, it's just sort of so you can get a general sense of size, but it's about this big. And that's me putting away the skull after we scanned it with a CT scanner. So in order to get this 3D manifestation that you see on the screen, we put it in a fancy scanner, a CT scanner, just similar to one that you would use for a medical scan, perhaps. And that's how we got this image. But what happens is after you get the scan isn't quite perfect yet. So we can zoom in and we can see some things like dots at the bottom, which I guess you probably can't see my screen, but so we can look at like all these just dots underneath the skull, and that's not great, right? So we want to get rid of those. So that's what I'm going to be working on. Yeah, Frankman says my bird ideas are out the window. Oops, I need to stop getting this thing in. Yeah, so definitely much bigger than a bird. Yeah, that's true. So I might have also given away another clue, which is that when I showed the picture of me holding the skull, um, I guess like part of what's given away is that um, it's smaller than you might expect, even though it's a big skull, and maybe I should actually just leave it up so that other people can see as they come in. Yeah. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just highlighting, clicking and dragging to highlight these dots, which there's a bit of a time lag. And so then you can see like those dots that are highlighted orange. I've highlighted them because I don't want them to be part of the final product. And so they're orange, and then I just click delete and they disappear after a wait. So this software that I'm using is called Blender. And as I understand it, it's kind of more often used for people that are doing like 3D, they're doing like cartoons and 3D animation and stuff like that. Clearly, I am using it for very different purposes. But so there's probably like some people who would tune in who would know how to use this software way better than I do, but we basically just use it for like cleaning up the CT scan data. David Dunn is here. Hi, David. Welcome. Thanks for joining. David Howden says, so the size is pushing me towards perhaps a big cat. Let's say lion, as that is iconic. Wow, I'm a little bit worried you guys are going to get this pretty quickly. I'm concerned. So it is indeed a big cat. And I guess we'll look at this view while I highlight some more stuff. So it's a big cat. It is not a lion, though. Some of the iconic features that you can see, let me think about. Oh, Franklin, you looked into Blender once, but you rarely use 3D software. What did you look into it for, if you don't mind me asking? I only ever just heard of it a few days ago, so I'm just learning how to use it myself. And I decided to have all you here with me learning how to use it as well. Is it an extant or an extinct species? It's extant, so it's a species that is still alive and among us. But, you know, like many of the big cats, it is a species of conservation concern. It's in trouble. Oof, this is super laggy and difficult. Oh, so this is a good view of actually another clue. Hopefully that image will get a little bit less grainy. But if you could see the nasal socket area here, it has really like big sort of open nose area. So it, I don't know, think about how a big cat for which taking in a lot of air at a given time might be beneficial, or having a wide nose. Mystery. Oof, this is slow. I should have deleted a bunch more of these dots and stuff before starting this, because as you're sort of deleting and deleting all these extra little pieces that got brought through in the scan, then the file size does get smaller and it gets easier to work with. So, okay, David Housen says he's gonna wait instead of saying big cat names at random. An admirable strategy. So this isn't the best angle for it, but in addition to seeing how it has kind of a big open area in the front of its skull here, another sort of distinctive feature of the skull is that it has sort of a domed front of its head here. Let me delete some more stuff to help reduce the file size as we go along. And then I'll try to change the angle here of the skull in a second so that we can get a little bit of a better picture of it. Franklin says a friend who used it was enthusiastic about it. I will say it's nice that this program that I'm using, Blender, is open source. So that's always nice. It's free. You do need a pretty good computer to use it. At least for like this file is pretty big, the one I'm working with now. Oh, good, and it's getting easier to move it around as I delete more and more of these extraneous points. And I should also say that like this skull was part of a museum. It is part of a museum collection. And one of the wonderful things that's happening in the age of computing is that more and more information that was like things that were in museums, and either you had to go to the museum physically to see it, and even if you went to the museum, it wouldn't necessarily be on display. This skull, once we're done cleaning it up and stuff, eventually this 3D modeling of the skull is going to be put online, and so anyone would be able to download it or request it and play around with it themselves. We have a really good view of some interesting teeth now. Indeed has huge canine teeth. Yeah, so it's really cool to think that, this work, it's not just cool to like spin a skull around and look at it and clean it up. The skull is going to get uploaded eventually and become like a more publicly accessible and available piece of data that's out there, and not just to the public, but also easier for other scientists to use it. So that is pretty neat, I think. So let's see, we can zoom in here into the nose a little bit, and it has like, there's a lot going on in its sinus cavity here. So this is an animal, I was talking about its big nose before. This is an animal that has like big sinus cavity, kind of a wide nose. It's taking in a lot of air at a time, and the air that it's taking in has a lot of contact with surfaces in its body early on. So perhaps if you've ever heard, like if you're outside in the cold and it's really cold out, it's better to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, because breathing in through your nose provides an opportunity for the air to warm up. The air has to go through your nose and warm up before it gets like to your brain and the other inner parts of your body. So this animal is breathing in cold air through its nose. We've already narrowed it down to a big cat, so I think that you might all be actually pretty close now to figuring out what kind of skull this is. I find it very satisfying to like delete all of these extra points and stuff that are around. I realize the view right now is less than stellar, David Dunn, ha ha ha. I should say, if anyone listening, if you're into nature stuff or anything like that, definitely, follow the other people who are in the comments. See David Howden posts lots of cool nature stuff, and David Dunn posts a lot of cool stuff with like astronomy, and always feel like I'm getting to visit other cool planets with David Dunn. And then actually, Frankman, I don't know. I see you a lot on like Issa's on like the insect on the bug scope, but I haven't seen anything of yours. I'll have to look into it. Yeah, David Dunn. Follow him for astronomy. Ooh. Frankman got it. Snow leopard. So this is indeed a snow leopard skull. And so I mentioned like the adaptations that it has in its nasal area so that it can breathe in cold air. This sort of domed part of its skull here supposedly also helps with the fact that it's breathing in a lot of low oxygen air and that the air is cold. But mostly I think the domed part of the skull is for the snow leopard needs, because there's so little oxygen in the air, it lives up high enough that there's less oxygen in the air. It needs to take in a lot of air to get out the amount of oxygen that it needs. So it's pretty cool to see, this animal. Ooh. Yeah, so you got the skull. That didn't take very long at all. How long have we been going? 15 minutes. Oof, fast. Definitely fast. Um, some of the stuff in the back here, but this is like a really nice image. I was working with a polar bear skull the other day, and since it was a bigger animal, the resolution, and it was done on a different scanner, like the resolution wasn't quite as good, and um, it was still like a really nice skull, but like you see if you can zoom in here, there's all these sort of like ridge lines. Oh, the resolution isn't very good yet. But if you've ever looked at like a 3D printer, there's a lot of like ridge lines from where it prints out, and the ridge lines are sometimes really distinct depending on like the resolution of the scan and the quality of the scan, how precise it is, I guess I should say. David Howden asks, are its lungs also specialized for low oxygen? I would assume so. I would definitely assume so, because that's like that's one of the big stresses that snow leopards face, is that they live so high up in these low oxygen environments that I would be surprised if they don't have sort of a lot of their systems adapted for that. Their blood delivery system, as well as like their lungs for getting oxygen out. I I also know that, not only do they live up really high in the mountains, but they also live on really steep terrain. So their paws are really big compared to the rest of their body. Proportionally, they have really big paws, and that helps, of course, with the snow, but also just for like gripping and moving around on these steep rocks and stuff like that. Um, One of the things that is really cool with these scans is that you can kind of even move like into the skull. So we're like just going through it right now, and now we're like, oof, I'm a bit disoriented. Actually, I'm not even sure. I guess we're looking out of its nose now. Um, or maybe not. Yeah. Yeah. So that's pretty cool, I think. Um, Frankman asks, how do you differentiate complicated structures versus deletable points? Is it always clear to decide? It's not always clear. So this is like, for me, like right now, I've just been deleting like a lot of little dots and stuff like that. Some other areas, like where it's less clear, for example, are sort of along here. Let me zoom out. Like along its lower jaw, there's some more textured stuff there that it's not clear to me. I probably will leave it, but it's probably like a lot of muscle attachment points and ligaments and stuff where there was like dense tissue tightly connected to the bone. And so for that, I would err on the side of just sort of leaving it. But that is where it becomes like trickier to differentiate if something should be deleted or not. And honestly, at this point, this is sort of a later processing step in the scan, but earlier I had to kind of make decisions about like how much of this stuff gets kept together or not, sort of like the resolution at which like things were lumped together or kept as like separate objects. So it's definitely bit of a bit of like an art form. Can you look at the real thing to compare? So if I was particularly confused, I could go look at, go pull the skull from the collection and compare. I don't think that there would be, I don't think in this case it would help that much. So this, like, as you can see in the picture in the side of the original skull, like this is just a skeleton. So actually differentiating bone versus, yeah, like other stuff that might still be on the skull is pretty easy. And sometimes also just like air shows up in the scanner for some reason, or like what they packaged it in. Because like when they do these scans, the skull goes in the scanner and then the scanner like moves and rotates around. So sometimes if they're worried about it wobbling, they'll like pack stuff in around the skull to keep it from moving. You can actually do these scans with specimens that are in soft tissue though. And so like we could put something that is like a preserved specimen, like it still has its skin and muscles and stuff. And we could put that in the scanner and eventually get to its bones, because the bone still has a different density than like the muscles and all that other tissue around it. But in a case like that, it does get trickier to differentiate different parts of the animal from each other, and it helps to have like a good knowledge of anatomy. That way you can kind of tell what to expect you're looking for. I did have an undergraduate student who was working on some bats that had been scanned, and these were like soft tissue scans, like I was just describing. So she was actually going through, and instead of picking apart the skull like I'm doing now and sort of isolating it, she was isolating the intestinal tract of the bat. And she was interested in looking for parasites and things that might be inside the bat's intestines. But one bat had really weird intestines, and so she called me to come look at it. And I realized that the bat, its anatomy looked really weird. There was like its stomach was squished around and its intestines were squished around. And I realized the bat was pregnant. It was a bat that was pregnant with twins. And I tell you what, seeing that scan, I was like, oh my goodness, pregnancy does crazy things to the body. It's crazy to me that any animals get pregnant, because just like there's so much just like, oh yeah, your organs are just swashed around. It was horrifying to see. This is a good question from David Howden. What's the resolution of the image? For instance, can you examine microscopic structure with this? Not with this one. And I'm actually a newbie enough that I don't know how to, at like the drop of a hat, look up what the actual scale is on this. That information is like saved somewhere. But we definitely would not be able to like zoom in and look at microscopic structures with this scan. So like pretty much I'm zooming in and what I see is what I get. And I wonder, oh yeah, finally you can see a little bit, you can see like these sort of ridge lines. So we're already seeing sort of the precision of the scan break down, because these ridge lines are sort of artificial. This is where when the CT scanner took a bunch of images, where it like stacked all the images together. And so we can see that like the resolution is such that even what in real life is a smooth surface of the skull along here, that smooth surface here is like broken down into ridge lines or ledges. Frankman, does the software tell how many points, vertices, whatever the model has? It does somewhere. Once again, this is, I'm not expert enough to know. But like if I scroll down, I think you can. Oh, actually, you can't see me scrolling down right now. Hang on. Okay, so if you look like all these orange triangles in the sidebar of the program that I'm like scrolling around in, these are not just the triangles that like compose like the surface of this image, but each one of these separate lines is actually like a different piece. So one of these is the whole skull, but all the rest of them are just like little specks and stuff like that that's floating around in this image that probably shouldn't be there, that we'd like to get rid of. David Howden says twins are unusual in bats. I think perhaps that distortion was excessive. Actually, in this species, it was common to have twins. Yeah. And you are correct though that a lot of bats only have one baby, or There are like some groups, some evolutionary groups of bats where it's more common to have twins. Um, there are also some species that even have like quadruplets that are the most common, and that's always crazy to me because the idea of flying while pregnant seems really hard to be flying around with extra weight. You know, in the case of birds, they offload that extra weight earlier on. Um, like in terms of like they lay an egg and then a lot of the development happens in the egg, not inside their body. So they don't have to like carry all those babies around with them to the point where they're getting very big. So we're like kind of underneath the skull right now, looking down into it. So this is the lower jaw. Yeah, but I think it would be um, so I'm definitely going to have some more posts coming up. I mentioned earlier that I've been working on a polar bear skull. We're actually going to do the rest of the bones for the polar bear as well. And so at the end of that project, I'm not sure if I'll be sort of regularly posting on it or if it will be more like I'll record working on it and then just have like sort of a final piece, speeding up everything and showing it all together. But definitely there will be some other bones coming up in the future, and like different types of bones besides skulls, and doing some sort of fancier stuff. I'm just learning how to use these programs, and so you're kind of you're basically getting right now like what one could do with less than a day of training with this software. So got the skull upside down right now, but hopefully I'll be able to show you guys cooler stuff as I learn more myself. So, okay, we've got it pretty well cleaned up now. So as a final kind of note, so something like this is pretty close to being uploaded as a final product. There is I guess it's kind of like a social media site, but for 3D like data like this. A lot of people use it for like to show off products that they've been designing, like new shoes and stuff like that. Oh, let me look. Oh no, did I close out of the project? Let's see. Where did I download an app for it? Oh no. Well, maybe I'll have to comment on this post later with this site that I found where people basically will upload stuff like this skull. And there are some other museums and labs and stuff like that 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 have like skulls and things uploaded. That I think it depends. Like sometimes you can only sometimes you can download the data and sometimes you can only sort of look at it and play around with it like I'm doing right now. But it is a pretty cool site, and I wish, let's see, I thought that I had left the tab up, but I can't. Let me see if I can just Google real quick. Or maybe someone here knows it. No, I cannot find it. Well, I will be sure to mention it in future posts, and I'll comment on this post when I find it. David Howden has another question. May have missed it. How long did the physical scan take? And is it something you can just set out going and leave, or do you have to supervise the process? So if you're just scanning a skeleton, the scan, I did not actually do this scan. We have a technician who does, but I've been around when he does it before. And I think for a skeleton, the scan can be, to actually do the scan, it can pretty much be like, I think it's less than 20 minutes. For if you have soft tissue scan, like let's say I have, a bat that died and it still has its skin and muscle and everything, and I kind of want to get like the whole thing, that scan can run overnight. Yeah. And sometimes so if there's like more different densities of tissues that you're trying to capture, then the scan can take a lot longer. And sometimes with scans like that, what you can do if the animals are small enough relative to your scanner, is you can put multiples, you can stack a bunch of them in the scanner at once in their own separate containers and run it overnight. And then later on, post-processing, like I'm doing now, kind of split them apart into different things. Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty cool. But I will leave us with just maybe a little spin of this skull so everyone can see. Get a last look at this lovely snow leopard. I think snow leopards are one of the coolest animals, I think. And so I was so happy to get to work with this. But that is it. All right, thank you everybody for coming and joining the broadcast. Be sure to stay tuned. Actually, I want to plug this weekend. I'm going to stop sharing. So this weekend, you had a little moment where you could see everything. This weekend, I'm going to be going to West Virginia, USA, and going to the United States' newest national park, which is called New River Gorge. And so at some point, probably Saturday, I'll do a brief little cast from there and show off the New River Gorge area. The area has been, a natural area for a long time. It's actually a really popular rock climbing area, but it was just newly sort of officially made a national park of the United States. So I'm really excited to go there, and I won't be rock climbing this weekend. I'll just be hiking, but I will be sure to queue it up and show everybody. Yeah, thank you, David, and thanks both Davids for your compliments.